Our marriage tip from Jesus today is don't retaliate. We're going back to Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, starting in verse 38. You have heard that the law of Moses says, if an eye is injured, injure the eye of the other person who did it. If a tooth gets knocked out, knock out the tooth of the person who did it. But I say, don't resist an evil person. If you're slapped on the right cheek, turn the other too. Going on in verse 40, if you are ordered to court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it for 2 miles. Boy, those are tough words coming from Jesus, right? I don't know that any of us sign up for turning the other cheek. Retaliation for wrongdoing is something that comes pretty naturally to us. So what we see here, what Jesus again is talking about, is comparing the old law to what he's introducing as the new way. And the Old Testament law demanded retaliation, interestingly. The old law said retaliate with equal force. You can look up some other scriptures in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy and Leviticus that talks about this idea that if something's done to you, you do it back to them at the same force with which it was done. And really what happened then, obviously, if you're about retaliation, then it creates a very selfish mentality that said, look out for yourself. Now, here's the question we want to ask ourselves today. What was Jesus trying to accomplish with this message? Are we supposed to be pushovers? I mean, is that what Jesus is saying? That we should just be doormats, and if people treat us poorly, that we should be gluttons for punishment? Or might he be introducing something else? And here's my premise. My premise is that Jesus's challenge is to be unselfish and sacrificial toward others. So even though retaliation is something that comes very naturally to us, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I've watched my kids from a young age, I haven't had to teach them retaliation. If sister takes a toy from brother, then brother is pretty quick to go try and rip it out of sister's hand. I mean, retaliation is something that comes out of us, right? But what Jesus is challenging the hearers of that day and us today is to be unselfish and sacrificial. So how does that look in marriage then? Well, here's a couple things I want to say to that. First, don't respond to the negative attitudes and actions of your spouse. Just because you come home and you're in a bad mood doesn't mean that you come into the house and you treat your spouse in a negative way, and then your spouse has the right to then treat you the same way, right? If your husband comes home and he's yelling and screaming at the kids because he's mad about something else, the attitude then shouldn't be that you should start screaming and yelling at him, because it isn't about eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth. The second thing is choose to be productive in conflict. So especially in arguments between the two of you, if your spouse isn't having the right heart or the right attitude originally, or let's say they're being passive aggressive, or they're being mean, or let's say that they're yelling, the challenge Jesus is giving us here is, instead of retaliating with the same behavior, instead of coming right back at him with the same manipulative, passive-aggressive, angry ways, choose to be unselfish and sacrificial, and choose to be productive. Choose to use your words. Choose to say, you seem upset, let's talk about this, but let's talk about this with love and respect at the core. So here's this challenge that we have, that Jesus is not interested in the old way in terms of do as you want, treat people as you want, especially treat them the way they've treated you. We all know the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. And in marriage, that's so important that even though your spouse may not be setting the best tone, that doesn't mean that you have to respond in kind. Choose to be unselfish and sacrificial, choose to be respectful and loving, and choose to be productive so that you can work through your issues as they come along. So take a few minutes to answer these questions in the Talk About It section, because I think they'll be really good for you guys to kind of evaluate where you are in your marriage, how you treat one another, and if you are prone to retaliation. And take that challenge that Jesus is giving us, that, we don't have to respond with retaliation. We can respond with grace and love.